many parts of the world, corporal punishment remains an acceptable way to discipline children. In Kiribati, one of the least developed Pacific Island nations, children are often hit when they misbehave. Sometimes, especially when alcohol is involved, it can turn into child abuse. Here's our story. Her guardian calls her Bass. Her biological parents abandoned her and she has no birth certificate. But her new adoptive mother, Sana, thinks Bass is about 2 years old. Despite her young age, she has been through a lot.
When I took the girl, her cheeks were bruised and she was bleeding from the corner of her eye. Her mouth was cut up and her back, legs and neck were severely scratched.
Sana's husband, Bara, witnessed the child being beaten by people who were clearly drunk.
This is the place where I saw Bass getting beaten up by the couple that was known as her adoptive parents. The adoptive dad said, "It's better to kill that baby rather than hurting her so bad." I told the adoptive mom that I will take care of the baby and bring her to my house.
Sana and her husband called the police and took the baby to the hospital.
The child had really bad bruises and scratches and her head was dislocated.
Since Bass has no one to take care of her, the police told Sana to take her home to join her family of 7 children.
My husband and I promised the police to take good care of her, no hitting or spanking.
Sana and her family have their own difficulties. After losing a house to the sea during a recent high tide, their second home was flooded too. They took refuge at their community house called Maneaba. This is where they cook, sleep, play and worship. And this is where Bass has found her new home.
The first time she came to my family, her thinking was different from other normal kids. She was scared of people and she liked to stay alone without others touching her.
Now, Bass has a family that takes good care of her and wants to raise her as their own.
They want to adopt Bass. She came to us, seeking for help for legal adoption. But the case is very complicated because the real mother, the biological mother, she's very hard to trace.
Baram, a social worker with the Ministry of Social Affairs, says that the case gets even more complicated because the couple Bass lived with had no documents for her.
They didn't legally adopt the child because the biological mother sold the child to the couple for 50 cents.
João Mendes is UNICEF's child protection officer in Kiribati.
Because most of the people never been registered, parents including their child, so mean that we cannot move forward in terms of legal adoptions.
But UNICEF and the government of Kiribati are working together to establish routine birth registration immediately after a child is born. But a more fundamental problem is alcohol abuse in Kiribati. After Bass's case became public, the adoptive parents who had abused her had fled. Not much is left at their house except for empty bottles of home-brewed coconut toddy. This is the kind of alcohol most people here drink, and because it is mostly done at home, the drinking is hard to control.
They produce their own, the home brew, because buying this kind of imported the drinks from the shops is also expensive.
Yun Jong Gang, head of the UN office in Kiribati, says alcohol exacerbates another problem that is plaguing Kiribati, an acceptance of corporal punishment.
The men drink, they beat. the woman, or the wife, and the children. So it really leads to domestic violence.
Even children are accustomed to being hit.
Many of them said that it's good to be beaten if they really have done something wrong. You know, this is a cultural, traditional perception. It's very difficult really to fight the violence when the people perceive that the violence can be used to settle the problems in the family or in the community.
But in a significant step forward, the village elders are working with the authorities to change the belief that physical punishment is an acceptable form of discipline.
If you look at the police behavior now, comparing to 3 years ago or 5 years, it's a little bit different, because now their perception on the corporal punishments and the violence in the family is a total different.
And when children are subjected to violence, they are now encouraged to speak up. It is customary in Kiribati for women to take in children in need.
Basically what happens if the orphans appears in the community, the extended family used to take the orphan and take care of him.
Bass now lives in a violence-free environment with Sana and her family.
Bas and I are always together. If she sees me, she comes to me and talks. She asks when she wants to drink and eat. She doesn't like to talk with people, only me. Wherever I go, she's with me all the time.
Sana and her family are now back in their house. Bass's legal adoption can only move forward once her biological mother is found. The couple that abused Bass are now in court.